Hello, everyone. I'll go ahead and get this meeting started. And first wanted to welcome you all here and acknowledge that we are on the traditional lands of the Confederated Tribes of the Colville Reservation. They are the first people, past and present, that we honor with the land itself and acknowledge that they are still here, continuing to bring their light to the heritage that they have, as well as a great partner of ours. So I wanted to acknowledge that right up front. John, if you can go ahead and pull up, or Wendy, I think, the agenda, so we can look that over. And then I will be looking for an approval of the agenda. So Zoom etiquette. We are all used to Zoom by this time, but we do ask that you keep your camera up if your bandwidth is able, so that we can see your faces and connect a little better that way. I'll also be doing the roll call next. Let me pull that up because I'm working here at home. Oh, okay, Carlene Anders.
I'm here, thank you.
Thank you. Kathy.
I'm here, thank you.
Deb Murphy.
Here, thank you.
Dell Anderson.
I'm here. Thanks.
Hey, thanks. Jesus Hernandez. Sue. We'll come back to him. Ken Sterner.
Present.
Ramona Hicks.
Present.
Yay. Ray Eichmeyer. We will come back. Rebecca Davenport. Rosalinda Kibbe.
Here.
Thank you. And I did get an excuse already for Senator Warnick. She will not be in attendance today. Dr. Tuggy.
Here.
Kat Latet.
She will also be absent today, Molly.
Okay, very good. Teresa Atkinson. Nancy Spurgeon.
I'm here and will bring up my camera once I finish my sandwich.
I get it. Okay, thank you. And Peter Morgan.
I'm here, thanks.
Thanks. All right, so as people come on, we will acknowledge that they are present, which brings me to the minutes, which we do have a change to the minutes from May. Rosalinda Kibbe needs to be shown as present in said minutes. So give everyone a chance to look those over. If there's any conflict of interest at this time, I also ask that you would bring that up. But if you find that you have a potential conflict of interest during the meeting, I again ask that you just raise your hand and let us know about that. We also have guests present. If you can go ahead and put your name and organization in the chat so that we know you're here. Also invite you to public comment if you have one at this time.
Hi, this is Laurel from Molina. I'll share a quick public comment if that's okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
And that's really just that we have launched a member COVID vaccine incentive. This is the second time we're doing that. Again, it's trying to reach out to those who are not yet vaccinated at all to encourage them to come on in for a COVID vaccine. It is for all Medicaid, Molina Medicaid members age 5 and up, and it's $100 vaccine incentive for receiving the first dose. It will be in place, just went back live again June 1. It will be in place through the end of the year. So just as we have in the region, different COVID vaccine initiatives and events, knowing that that's available to try and encourage folks to come on in. And we can send a flyer about that following the meeting to the AC.
Okay. Yeah, and I'll make sure that we get that out to everyone then. Yeah, thank you. Now the agenda portion is pages 1 through 12. And at this time, I entertain a motion to approve with changes.
This is Ken. I'll make that motion. I'll second that.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Any questions? Hearing none, I'll go ahead and ask for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed would be nay. And abstained. Comment, no? All right, motion carried. Thank you. At this time, the acting executive director update with John. John?
Thank you all and happy June. Caroline, if you can bring up the ED report.
Yep, working on it. Give me a second. And let's see.
So as
Hold on.
Caroline brings it up, we can just go to the first slide. A lot of the work statewide really has been focused on the Medicaid transformation project renewal and the public comment period and getting the application submitted. So actually, Caroline, sorry, once I told you to bring up the slide deck, I'm just going to ask you to bring up the public comment letter that we crafted for the NCACH board. So as part of the process, we've been working to put together a comment letter that the board could review and sign off of. And so what we did was we took a template that we had available from a few other ACHs, and then we crafted it to be specific to what we thought our region's response was. I ran the initial letter through Molly and then also through the executive committee. If I were to summarize really our goal of the letter for the public comment period, it's really just to express, that we are excited and we are encouraged at the direction that the healthcare authority is going through the waiver. I'll openly recognize that there's a lot of details that need to be worked out, and a lot of that will be done the second half of the year. But we wanted to avoid really getting too far down into the weeds for the public comment and just really note that, the healthcare authority really has moved from really a clinic-centric focused one really around whole person health and health equity, which actually did not write in this letter, but reminds me that it does align exactly with our mission statement for NCACH. So the direction and the vision really is in good alignment with the mission statement. Few things we did call out. If you look at the first paragraph after the bullets, we call out the value our ACH brings as a mutual convener and bringing partners together. The bullet or the paragraph after that, we really call out some of the work we've done with community-based care coordination and building a care coordination infrastructure and support in our region, and how that will also align with the care coordination work of the waiver. In the last paragraph on the first page, we recognize that the healthcare authority is going to be testing some payment innovation for care coordination and social determinants of health through in lieu of services. And really just recognizing, that, again, we celebrate the fact that they're testing that innovation. We're supportive of it. And, I'll wholeheartedly say that we'll be learning through the process and learning, how effective it is. We'll also encourage partnership with the managed care organizations. And then at the end of that, at the start of the second page, what we really call out is just that, again, an encouragement to keep that process as administratively unburdensome as possible. So we recognize that payment is great. Payment, once you get into a Medicaid system, can sometimes get very complicated. And so we just wanted to add an additional encouragement that we work with our community-based organizations in the regions to keep it as simplified as possible. And then finally, really again, just calling out the focus and the re-emphasis on health equity, which was one of the main focuses of the state innovation model grant early on, and then in some ways got lost in the original Medicaid transformation project when we were really diving into clinically focused work. So we didn't really call out, we didn't spend a lot of time getting into the nitty-gritty details, but really we wanted to recognize that a lot of the conversations the healthcare authority has had with accountable communities of health really is reflected in the waiver. It may not be word for word, and it might not be exactly how we said it, but we wouldn't have anticipated that to occur. But you can tell that the healthcare authority heard what the ACHs had to say in the waiver application, and that they're making a good effort to really focus more on whole person health and health equity. I wanted to pause to see, I know we had sent the letter out on Friday. Does anyone have any specific comments or questions on the letter? Is there any concerns from anyone who's had a chance to read the letter? And I should, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Nope, Ramona, you step up.
I was just gonna say, I thought it was really well written. I thought you did a good job. I'm in agreement with it.
And I was just going to note, we did list every board member's name on the last page, and the sector that you represented. We decided to go sector specific, since it's really an NCACH letter and not your organization's letter. And so that's the way we are really looking at signifying that. If there's no concerns, I hate to spur this on you, but Molly, when I was looking at some of the rules, they do actually encourage the board to formally approve the letter, since it's really a kind of a somewhat policy stance. So would you be willing to do would you be willing to run through a motion to approve that letter to be submitted by Molly?
All right. Has everyone had a chance to look it over thoroughly? I can give you some more minutes.
This is Carlene. I'd like to move to approve the letter as written.
At this time, okay, thank you for the first and second motion, but we do have a message.
Laura, you can, I know you can't vote, but feel free to jump in
Oh,
because
thank you. I wasn't sure if I was supposed to really chat, but Kat did circulate the materials, I think late yesterday, and just had shared a comment that she was hoping to follow up with you directly. It was more about the in lieu of services being used to help pay specifically for care coordination, that we just weren't sure that that was 100% accurate interpretation. So I think that was part of the nature of the comment.
would it be more accurate, and I'm not looking at the letter right now, to say to support care coordination work and social determinants of health?
Yeah, I think so. Maybe just softening it a little bit. I mean, definitely in lieu of services is going to help fund health related services, but how it does that and if it's directly supporting the care coordination, I think maybe some of that's in the details that you were talking about that are still to be, fleshed out. So I think that was the nature of the concern. I don't know, Gerardo, I know you're on as well. I'm not sure if she had communicated anything more to you directly.
No, I think that was the gist of it, Laurel.
All righty, thank you.
And I may share, Laurel's comment to me doesn't really change the intent. It's really just supporting the idea of going through the in lieu of service process. So in my perspective, that doesn't have any major influences on the intent of that section, and I'm happy to make that small adjustment.
So at this time, we do have a change to the document. So
Molly, I'll just amend that to be the current as written.
Okay. And in a second.
I'll second.
Thank you, Ramona. All right. Any other further questions at this time? Then I call for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed would be nay. Or any abstentions? All right, motion carried. Thank you. We'll get that signed and amended and signed.
Well, yeah, we'll make that small amendment, and and Molly will get soon.
Can you resend that out then to the board?
Yeah, perfect. And then Caroline, can you bring back up the ED report? So as Caroline is getting that brought up, the other primary thing statewide that's been going on, this is actually more region-wide, is the Healthcare Authority and Centers for Medicaid Medicare Services did do a virtual presentation on the chart model and the alternative payment model for hospitals on May 31st of this year. And so really it was focused on going over the basics of that payment model, capitated payment arrangement for hospitals that would sign up for chart, allow them to ask questions. It did not provide the actual payment arrangement or model for hospitals, so it just gave them a little bit more information. I can tell you just conversations with the hospitals who have been part of the chart conversation, everyone is still approaching it with a level of interest, but also a level of leeriness as well, because there's always a lot of concerns, especially for critical access hospitals, about the sustainability of any payment models, especially when there's a focus around reducing Medicare expenditures. The payment models should be out at the end of June, and that we'll be able to update the board more on what that looks like. We probably won't provide a lot of hard details, but we'll be able to provide more updates on if the hospitals are interested in the payment model and what that looks like moving forward. I wanted to just thank Cooley Medical Center, so Ramona and Shoshana, for giving us a tour. It was actually the first time I got a tour of Cooley Medical Center, which surprised me. I've talked to you all so often, but I realized I'd never been out to get the actual tour. So thank you, Ramona, for that.
You're very welcome.
And then in May, the ACH's EDs have one of our retreats in person. You can see the photo on there. You can also see, I see Senator Carlette is in one of the boxes on my screen right now. She was also at the ED meeting, as well as Carol Mosher, who is a former executive director for Greater Columbia. So we were able to celebrate those two as they are retiring. And I know Linda, retirement is a relative term for Linda, as she is always actively involved in her community. We also talked about how we can better align policy agendas and policy work at the state level. And so I just wanted to give you guys a heads up to expect more to come on that. If you go to the next slide. Some key staff updates. I want to welcome Morgan Eastman, our new communications manager. And Morgan started June 1st. So she is on day 4 with our organization. And I actually told her I was going to give her a moment to introduce herself and give a little bit of a background. So Morgan, go ahead.
Thanks, John. It's nice to see you all. I will just give you kind of a quick background. I have lived most of my life in Chelan County, and I left for a few years to study at WSU, where I earned a bachelor in communications. And then I returned to the area, and the last 5 years I spent up in Leavenworth working for the Chamber of Commerce. So I was their event director, and I also did a little bit of economic development for them as well. And then in that time, go Cougs in the chat. In that time, I also earned a MBA online through WSU as well. So as John said, I've just been here a couple days, but I am excited and looking forward to getting to know each of you.
So you can all meet Morgan this Friday, June 10th, if you come out to our open house and retirement party for Senator Parlett. So Friday afternoon, 3 to 6 p.m. Linda will be there. We'll be celebrating her, as well as giving people an opportunity to see our new location. Wendy's going to dump the event registration in the chat. If you are planning on coming and you haven't registered, please register so Teresa has an idea of how many people to expect. Otherwise, you will be coming to empty plates and we won't have any food to feed anyone. And it's going to be Friday evening. You're not going to be as happy to celebrate. So please get out there and register. I wanted to call out May 13th, our team did a team building exercise at Chelan Douglas Community Action Council Empty Bowls event. And so one thing we're trying to do quarterly, just as a team to promote getting out there and being actively involved, is to do a team building event out in the community supporting some of our community-based organizations. If board members have ideas in their areas about any groups or events we could go out there and just jump on an afternoon and join, feel free to share them with me and I will pass them on to the team. We would love to be doing it across the region and not just in Wenatchee. So any ideas or any thoughts are always welcome. Board update. We will be sending out an annual board survey this month. We did one last year. I believe it was the first one we've done in a long time that we did that was focused on governance. And we had Mike Bonetto come and speak as well on policy governance at that time. We've done a few tweaks to it, but we're utilizing pretty much a similar survey and we're going to be sending that out in June. And then just as a reminder, our board retreat is June 15th, 8:30 to 4 p.m. And Chris Kelleher will be going over the agenda a little bit later on today when we are giving the strategy work update. I'm excited to be doing something in person, assuming COVID numbers stay in control with us for the next month and a half, and seeing everyone and just getting some time to catch up a little bit more than just Zoom and doing it in person. July, thank you, Carlene. Did I say June? I'm just trying to get through the month. If you go to the next slide, just a few quick partner updates. Another example where we're trying to expand some of our partners. We've been working more closely with Our Valley, Our Future in the Chelan Douglas area. And we've actually been mentioned and aligned with 4 action plan items where we are going to be a supporting partner. And you can see those up here on the screen around telehealth, coordinated social service, community health needs, and access to 24/7 social service. We're staying in the supportive partner role because really that's where we see our fit. We don't see ourselves leading any of the localized efforts, but really how we support other agencies to lead that and be that back-end support. So I'm really excited to continue to build that out. Wendy will dump a link of that action plan into the chat. And as well, we're again trying to figure out how we go to individuals' tables and engage in their work. So if you see opportunities to do this in any county, in any area, again, please reach out and how we can link to already efforts going on in the community. And then even with our focus on shared measurement, we've been connecting with local health jurisdictions and really figuring out, again, how we partner with local public health and shared data management. They are the first group we are reaching out to and connecting with really to build that idea of shared data infrastructure. And Sarah has taken the lead and she's doing a wonderful job with that. If you go to the next slide, just a quick reminder, May partner convening, we spent some time focused on expanding civic muscle through community partnership. And so we had Patty Smith and David McPhee from the Colorado School of Public Health really focused on what it means to do community engagement, what it really means to go out to individuals' tables in the community and partners in the community. And then how do we really work with the community to build that civic engagement? I would say as a board, have that opportunity in the roles that we serve, be actively involved in our community and be leaders in our community. What we want to do is ensure that we're continuing to build that throughout our community, looking at ways that we can define and grow community leaders in all aspects and in all different cultures of our community. And really that civic engagement and that community engagement really improves the way we deliver health and also the way individuals are able to improve their own personal health. And so it's really a strong encouragement to focus on civic muscle and civic engagement as a component of that. You can see up on the screen the June partner convening, June 21st, 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. And this again is going to be focused on community engagement, and we are going to be discussing and listening from direct community partners on the ways that they have used lived experience and working with people directly in the community to build out really more health and health equity. If you go to the next slide, this is a slide from the last partner convening that Patty reviewed And really, when you're looking at this slide, it just, again, reemphasizes that focus on really investing in the community, not just going out to the community to get input, but really driving and investing into the community to help lift their ability to develop civic muscle, community engagement, and really drive and make change in health and well-being. And this really aligns with our notion in our first pillar of distributed leadership, where it's not just us gathering information and making decisions, but us empowering the community to be able to make the decisions to drive that change. So again, just continuing that focus as we go along. And if you go to the last slide, you're going to be hearing from the staff on our strategic priorities today. So I'm not going to be diving into that as I did the last meeting, but just really get the staff to give you guys a little bit more detail on where we're moving along in our strategic priorities as we hit the mid-year point. And I am already over, so I am going to be done speaking. And is there any questions? Perfect. Then I'm turning it over to Molly to move on.
All right, and I'm going to turn it right back over to you, but also invite Caroline to talk about the NCACH CBCC vision. So take it away, John, again.
And
Well,
John, you're gonna share slides for me this
Yeah.
time, right? Well, helping each other out. It's really hard to look at your notes, look at people's faces, and share a screen at the same time. So John's gonna be my co-pilot here. So last month, we were all joined by Michael Arnis from the Healthcare Authority, and he provided an overview of the Medicaid transformation renewal. And he spent a bit of time focusing in on the community hub and health-related services elements. So today, we wanted to spend some time outlining our region's vision for community-based care coordination for these elements. And we wanted to dedicate time on it because it's such an important part of the waiver renewal, but also because it's so important to our mission. So I'm hoping that as I share information today, you don't hesitate to ask questions or chime in about any recommendations that you have, because this is really hard, complex work, and it's a slow kind of evolving work. So you get to kind of shape it as we go along. I would say at a high level that our vision is aligned with the Healthcare Authority and other ACHs, but our language and our approach is a little bit different. It might sound a little bit different. The quote unquote community hub vision that is taking shape in our region is not really about having one centralized entity that's managed by the NCACH for the whole region. It's about working with our network of partners and supporting infrastructure that enables like a well-connected system, a well-connected CBCC system. And I'll describe that in more detail a little bit later. So John, if you go to the next slide, I did want to start first with a definition of what we mean by community-based care coordination. And we worked on this definition with regional partners, and it took a while to get here, but I think having shared language allows us to get on the same page about what we mean and what we don't mean. And we actually made adjustments to this definition after the packet went out. So I will just give you time to quickly look it over just for 30 seconds, and then I'll tell you what we've changed. Okay, I'm hoping that was enough time. If not, by the time you get to the last bullet, we had several partners suggest that we adjust that final bullet to say that the approach focuses on problem solving, advocating, and communicating on behalf of and with clients to build up their self-sufficiency and self-efficacy. They felt that that should really be called out because The whole point is to help people help themselves as they navigate services. So I think having this definition has been really helpful to our network of partners because it describes key ingredients, right? Like the things that you see highlighted in orange. And once we understand those key ingredients, we start to realize that there's actually a lot of different types of community-based care coordination programs across a variety of sectors. And they're all important parts of our network as we think about how to support it. So I'll go into some of those examples a little bit more on the next slide. But first, are there any questions or comments about the definition before I move on? I want to leave space we have plenty of time for questions. We allocated half an hour.
My question is, how hard and fast is the face-to-face component? Because of the geography, it feels like that's going to be challenging at times for some of this work to get done.
Yeah, and
or
I
that
know.
just could be a component of it.
Yeah, I think certainly during COVID, some of the programs shifted to, even just video like Zoom and it's not to say that every single visit needs to be face-to-face, but the point is that you're meeting people where they're at. It's not always about asking them to come into your building or your offices. So if you're working with students, sometimes it's meeting them in schools. If you're working with parents, sometimes it's either meeting them in their homes or in their local community, at the library, wherever it makes sense. So it's not hard and fast, but I would say if there's no face-to-face component, some of our partners might wonder like if that's really, truly community-based care coordination. Ray, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things lost in translation. There's also lots of trust, and then it takes time. You have to do. I truly believe face-to-face is really important. Sometimes the patient doesn't want to do that with you, which is okay. And some of those people probably don't need a face-to-face, but it's time-consuming and important.
Thanks, Ray. Kathy, you had your hand up. Did you want to add something?
I just had a question, Caroline, about the clients as equal partners, and if there had been any discussion on the client's participation in evaluating their care, as well as planning, developing, and monitoring.
We have not specifically talked about that, but yeah, that's a good question.
Just to make sure everyone is on the same page and moving, towards the same goals.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and ideally, if it's a person-centered approach, it would have some elements of that, checking in about that. Any other questions or comments before we move on to the next slide? And again, this definition, it's not rocket science and it's still being adjusted, but I actually think that pausing to make sure we all agreed on what we were talking about and getting on the same page was really helpful. I think during the Medicaid waiver work, when people talked about CBCC, whether it was the Healthcare Authority or ACHs, like we didn't always know what exactly it was we were talking about. On the next slide, John, here's some important assumptions that have shaped our vision and what we're envisioning for the waiver renewal work. I don't know that all other ACHs see it this way, but this is how we see it. So there are a variety of partners that are doing great work to deliver community-based care coordination services. We want to support and enhance their work, not disrupt it. The term hub is misunderstood because it means a lot of different things to different partners. And we're more interested in promoting a connected network than we are in creating a centralized community hub for the region. And lastly, to create a connected network across our large rural region, it's going to depend on a variety of partners that really, if you look at them carefully, they have distinct roles and functions, and we're going to go into that a little bit more. But on the first bullet, I just wanted to share a few examples to kind of give you examples of partners you might have heard of, and why there is actually such a broad array of CBCC programs. So Okanagan Fire and communities and schools of North Central Washington, they provide services to children and youth that match our definition of CBCC. They might not have called it CBCC, right? They might not, on their marketing materials, they probably don't say we provide community-based care coordination. But when you look at how they deliver their services, it is fundamentally a CBCC program. Another one that I learned about not too long ago is the North Central Educational Service District, right? They have family resources coordinators who, as Janelle puts it, they act as tour guides to connect families to evaluations, determine eligibility, they do some parent coaching, and it's not, they provide those services in natural environments, so not in a clinic or it's not school-based. So again, that fits our definition of community-based care coordination. And then there's partners involved in the health home program, which we've spent some time talking about, Aging and Adult Care of Central Washington, Action Health Partners, Molina, Rural Resources. And then there's a COVID Care Connect program. How many of you have heard of that, right? That's been around, administered by the Department of Health. It's now going to be, or is being administered by Action Health Partner for our region. So there's just, and even recovery coaches and recovery navigators, they also provide community-based care coordination. So the point is, we can't think that CBCC is a program or a model, because there's different ways to do it. And if we want to build a healthy network for our region that helps our residents, we need to account for all of those programs and figure out how to connect them so that it's a well-functioning system. I'll just pause there just to see if there's any questions about those assumptions. Ray, I see your hand up.
I have a question. Because of the variety and the significant scope difference, do we want to have a minimum competency of what that program does? Like to add that definition? I mean, you kind of had some definitions in the first slide, but should the training of the people providing that care have a minimum standard?
I'm hoping you're not asking me to answer that because I don't have an answer, but I think it's a great question. And that would be something to work on with our network, Ray. And actually, Ray, community paramedicine, you're making me realize that's another type of community-based care coordination, right?
Eileen, can I just jump in?
Yeah, of course, jump in.
Answer, but Ray, the thing to think about too is who is really responsible for that, right? A lot of these programs already have some of that in place. That's being operated through state agencies or coalitions and that. So you also want to think, is it really within our realm to be in charge of making sure that's done, or is it really in our realm to make the connections?
What does the rest of the board feel? It's hard to, in my mind, it's like, hey, we're doing this. I'm going to call it A. We're doing a project, but with that A project, you might, not get all apples. You might get bananas. I mean, the expectations and trust becomes a factor unless there is some sort of standardization with training or something like. And I don't know. I just feel like it could cause more problems than it will cause distrust, because someone will get missed, or someone will get hurt, or something will happen.
This is Dell. I think also one of the difficulties we have is that from an NCACH perspective, we can promote and program, we don't necessarily we don't authorize a policy on how the program functions as employees. And so I think that, Ray, that's getting to what you're talking about, is you're talking about you want a kind of what this project team looks like and how they're going to function. Is there a baseline for what types of activities they will do? I think NCACH role isn't the employer. And so that may be a little bit harder, or maybe I'm wrong on that, but that's just where my mind went as you're talking about that.
But that might, let's circle back to that a little bit later when we dig into roles and functions, because I think actually there's some connections there, Ray, and to your point, Del, as well. And Peter, do you want to speak more about the comment you chatted in?
No, I was just thinking out loud that, if we're, promoting and coordinating services, it might imply, endorsement or, legitimacy that we're conferring on something that we may not really be intending. So I think that's the nature of Ray's question, is what does our involvement connote to the public?
As an ACH, like
As an ACH, yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, those are all really great questions. This is awesome. I'm loving the questions and the engagement. So let's go on to the next slide. Again, this just illustrates the point on the prior slide that the term hub is misunderstood and means a lot of different things depending on the context. And I don't know, maybe some of you know of some other hub that's out there, but we've got, the Star Hub, right, Molly, out in Grand Coulee area. We've got the Care Connect Washington hubs that DOH has funded. We had the Pathways Hub model, you name it. There's a lot of different hubs, and I don't know that these all are structured the same way. And I think that's where it starts to confuse the language and confuse the conversations. And I've included a few little visuals related to network structure on the lower right-hand side. And I put those in there because I think structure is actually really, really important when you think about building out a network. And I think most of the time when people say hub, they probably think about that centralized image where you have like a hub and spokes, right? But the reality across our 4-county region is that all of these different programs I named earlier and the players, we're really operating as a decentralized region. It doesn't mean that it's chaotic and not like coordinated, but there's not one central place that like manages and oversees everything. So there's multiple hubs and they're working in different ways, right? Like if we're going to use that term loosely. So for us as an ACH, I think the strategic question is not how do we centralize all of these different programs. I think the strategic question is how do we best connect all of these elements so that they're not working at cross purposes and not creating like complete chaos for our partners on the ground, like the care coordination organizations. On the next slide, this is where we spell out a little bit more of the direction that we're heading when we're envisioning what we need to accomplish under the waiver renewal. And I think we see our structure and function as being decentralized, right? I just said that. And you could, if we start to break it down a little bit more into types and roles, like the functions and the roles across a community-based care coordination network, I think having that, we can be clearer about who's doing what, who's on first to do what, and it's easier to figure out how to coordinate with one another, and so that we are a well-functioning system. So I'm going to go through each of these roles and tell you a little bit more about how we've so far made sense of them or are making sense of them. So the infrastructure steward, and I don't know if this is the best term or not, but this is really like a regional organization that's laser focused on shared infrastructure to support CBCC programs. And again, to your point of like, are they endorsed CBCC? Do they have, minimum competencies? We don't know that yet, but that's a great question to answer. But this organization would be committed to infrastructure regardless of the payer or the target population. So by design, it would be building up and supporting an infrastructure that supports any CBCC effort, not just a few. Because I think when we start building infrastructure for a specific program, that's when things get siloed. And then there's like different platforms for different programs, and there's different directories for different programs and so on. So if we have an entity that's focused on the whole system, and is trying to align it and maybe minimize duplication, I think that would go a long way for our network. The second role there, we're calling it third-party administrators. I wouldn't get too hung up on that term, but I think in this layer, these are organizations that administer and oversee specific programs in our region. So I mentioned the DOH COVID Care Connect. Under the Healthcare Authority, there's Health Home. There's also Foundational Community Supports. And then the ACH is also expanding the Recovery Coach Network. That's in some ways, we're kind of like a third-party administrator. And there's probably more out there. But the point is that they're the ones that are administering and overseeing a specific model for a specific target population. Then under that are the care coordination organizations. So these are the ones that actually employ that community-based workforce, the folks who are helping people navigate services, right? So the ones that kind of provide services the way we defined it earlier. And then the resource providers, we shouldn't forget them, because really, if there are no resources to help people navigate to, then the whole system doesn't need to be there. You can't help people navigate to nothing. So we need to invest in local resources if people are going to get the supports they need around their health and social needs. So for the system to work well, we need to invest in all of these layers. And I think sometimes what gets confusing when we talk about a community hub is that some organizations play multiple roles, right? Or some just play one. And sometimes we're conflating the roles. So it's like it starts to get really messy and confusing about how to work together. So this is just an attempt at trying to disentangle the mess and then be clear about who's on first for what, right? It's not one entity has to control everything, but we have to be clear about who does what. The last thing I'll mention, because this is something Michael Arness talked about last month, is whichever entity is playing that shared infrastructure steward role is inevitably going to be really involved in community information exchange. And you've probably heard that term before. It implicates a lot of information technology, platforms, resource directories. Essentially, it's just the exchange of information across a network of cross-sector partners, right? So there's a lot of different elements to that, whether it's resource data or making closed loop referrals, or even if like you're super advanced, one single client record, which, I know the Health Information Exchange in the state of Washington has attempted to do, but I'm not sure that has been extremely successful. But I do think that community information exchange is a huge part of that infrastructure, but also workforce, right? So if you don't have a workforce that's able to do community-based care coordination and help people navigate services when it's difficult, then then the infrastructure doesn't work very well either. I'm going to pause there and see if there are comments, questions, or counter proposals to the framework you see on the slide here so far.
This is Mike. I really like the idea of the hub clarity and as to what type of hubs we're going to build. Because I think the decentralized hub where you have almost like centers of excellence that may be coordinating the care, I mean, coordinating the work of that sector of work, makes a lot of sense to me. I think that's kind of what we've tried to do sometimes in healthcare. We have centers of excellence that do a better job than people just trying to do it on their own. But coordinating the work would be the primary role for that. And then, so I'm curious to see where we end up as far as the type of hub, if we go to a distributed hub or really more of a decentralized with some kind of a centers of excellence idea around the type of services being provided. Because then you could have standards. You know, if you have standards, then you can actually apply those across those sub partners, those partners in there.
I think it's going to have to be organic. Certain clients will be more trustworthy of certain organizations and not of others. I think, or the communication path and patient tracking, and it will have to all be organic. I mean, it's got to make sense for each organization.
So Caroline, as I'm thinking about this, I'm envisioning, you know, the thing we're trying to solve is to connect people with need for services with the services that are out there. And that, you know, the hub's role would be to make sure that we help clients navigate their way to the services they need. In my mind, that implies a degree of centralization or, you know, overall knowledge or intelligence of the CBCC network and partners so that we can connect people to those. Am I envisioning this?
Yeah, I think awareness of the network, you're absolutely right. But to me, that doesn't imply centralization. That implies like being really connected and well aware of one another. And so, like, I'll give you an example of where the centralization kind of breaks down sometimes. I know in the Pathways Hub conversations, like it was envisioned that hub would be the centralized screening point for the entire region. But the reality is that a lot of people, when they have needs, they turn to their local community and they are then screened. And so like this idea that it's, you know, if you're trying to build a system that works for residents, you also have to take into account like how they access care, which is very local oftentimes. So they might go to their local hub, you know, their local hub, which is probably more like a care coordination organization. So this, for me, that speaks to things not being centralized and having to build a system that is responsive to people who usually turn to the people they trust in their community. But I don't think that decentralized means that you're not well connected and well aware of one another. I think if you are, then you can work really well together. Like decentralized doesn't mean chaos or you know, lack of knowledge of what's out there and who can help. Another interesting point around centralization, Peter, is maybe like eligibility checks. I know I've talked to Action Health partners about this quite a bit around the Health Home program, right? Like it's super hard for anyone to know who's eligible for Health Home. Like if you have access to Provider One, you can maybe look it up, but otherwise, like there's this lack of visibility into who's eligible for what. And I think if that process was more connected or centralized, like then people would have the information they need as they're helping folks in their community. And so there's probably, you know, it's not necessarily black and white either or centralized, decentralized, but there's some distinctions to think through that I think could be helpful as we figure out how to set up something that works for the people who need the care, right? Not for the system, for the people. But And to your point, Ray, about it needing to be a little bit more organic, I think that's something that I've really learned in the last couple of years working on the CBCC stuff, is that things look a little different everywhere, right? Same with community paramedicine. It looks a little bit different everywhere, but there's common elements. So yeah, I don't know if that answered your question, Peter, or your thoughts.
It starts to, yeah. I mean, I'm just trying to envision a client. You said people turn to who they know and trust. But if the people they know and trust don't actually provide the service they're looking for, then it's incumbent on that trusted partner to know, where to refer them. So that would be a very decentralized hub, but that also implies a lot of sort of shared intelligence and intent on the part of the partners to do that coordination themselves, so that somebody isn't just passed willy-nilly around an uncoordinated network, like happens in specialty services sometimes, where very sick patients get punted from one specialist to another without anyone necessarily owning the overall health of the patient. This would be, in a social services context, the corollary. We don't want people just doing loops through different services. Anyway, I'm trying to envision it. I'm not criticizing. I'm just trying to understand
these
how
are
it
good
might
questions.
work.
I don't have it all figured out either, Peter. But yeah,
you don't? Oh, come on. Yeah.
Ray, you got your hand up again?
Peter, that's exactly right. I mean, if we're going to say you're going to do care coordination, then you have to have the very minimum. What is that? That is like, who to refer people to with any resource. And so that means you have to stay on top of your game of what's available out there. And that's where maybe NCACH can help. But so there's our minimum. That's what I'm saying. Like, that would be an example of a minimum standard or minimum education or a minimum capacity or a minimum, competency as an organization. You just you might not be, I might not be the right door, but you are, Peter, right? And so I could do a warm handoff, so they're not like, floundering.
Yeah, and this comes up a lot in the context of resource directories, which we've actually been discussing with some of our CBCC partners. Like, if everyone has like a slightly different directory, then we don't actually have shared knowledge of what's out there. Molly?
There is also 211 as a resource, and I know that some people scoff at that idea, and they think that 211 hasn't rose to what it was expected as a resource, but that is what we do here in my office. Is we are credentialed through all of the organizations that we refer and apply for our clients, and so it isn't we are all that's here in this rural community. There is nothing. The hospital would hand out an application for food stamps and didn't know that person couldn't read or write. So then that's how it started getting referred to us as a way to help close that gap in our very rural community. I have met face-to-face with clients that are 22 miles down a dirt road. So it isn't that we don't do face-to-face, because we do as often as we can, but these are people who have not had services in the past in our rural communities, and just trying to help fill a gap.
So this is Nancy. Molly, in some of the meetings that we've had about resource directories mostly, is that one of the statements I made in our last meeting is that, because you were saying some people scoff at 211, right? What my years of being in this kind of work is that we keep coming up with new platforms, new ideas, new things, but we don't realize that what we already have probably is really good. It just hasn't had the resources to get to the level of what is needed. And so we don't necessarily have to be going out and looking for new things. We need to figure out how do we infuse what we have within our community, and support those projects, so that we're not just crushing work that's already been done.
I agree. 211 needs to be looked at least again.
Right.
And they're at the table in our conversations about resource directories and community-based care coordination. So we're working closely with them. Linda, I see your hand up.
So Caroline, I just have a question. So I had the opportunity to be with the Chelan County Commissioners on a project in Stehekin last week. And lots of time we were in a bus going to and fro, but I heard them say that lots of the calls that they get as county commissioners, they're things that they can't provide those services, whatever it is. So is the ACH expecting to be a resource for entities like, for example, county commissioners who maybe get requests on social service issues or things like that that they're not in charge of, but if they knew, okay, we'll call the ACH and maybe they can direct you to the right people. Is that one of the goals of the ACH? I'm not caught up on all your strategy.
I think it's more about making sure that those county commissioners know about resources in their own communities, or even 211 or whatever the resource directory is, so that they can go look it up. So that's, that shared infrastructure of what's out there, what exists out there, who's eligible for what, like that's something that they hopefully would have somebody in their local community that they could connect with who would be that on the ground expert for people in their community. That's the way I envision it. I wouldn't envision people coming through the ACH for that info, but ideally if we build a healthy, like valid shared infrastructure, then that information is more readily available. I'm noticing that we're over time, John, so I'm gonna try to wrap it up, but I'm loving all the questions. I do have one big question for the board to think about, which is that we're at a point right now where NCACH and our regional CBCC partners, we do need to decide who should take on this role of supporting the regional shared infrastructure, like who is going to play this steward role. And I think NCACH could take this on, though we would probably need additional staff if we did that. We can continue to convene regional partners the way I've done. We can support network development and capacity building, but there's some areas where we're just not going to be as strong as potentially other partners. But before I even put it on the table to our partners that we could play this role, I wanted to make sure I got input from the board, because if any of you say, no way, we shouldn't be playing this role, then I wouldn't offer it as an option. And then if it is an option, then I'll put it on the table, and then we would work with our partners to weigh the pros and cons of whether the ACH or someone else should take on this role. But it's an important role and one that needs some focused attention, like out of the gate. And yeah, so does anyone feel strongly either way about NCACH offering to take on the role of regional infrastructure steward? I think that's the question on the table. Molly, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I wondered if this was part of the retreat agenda, that maybe we can have everyone think about this some more, do some research on their own, and then we'll be together next month in person.
John, I can't remember what else is on the agenda, if we would have time.
Yeah, we'd have to look at that, Molly. I don't want to promise that, because we kind of structured out the agenda, not necessarily focused on this topic. So we might be able to, and we can look at it and we can see if it. I would comment to say, like, there's two parts of the question too, right? If the board is in agreement with this vision, we would still work to support building this out. So to a degree, there'd still be staffing someplace that needs to be established, and efforts and funding to go into the vision. And then really part of it, right, is would NCACH be providing that direct role, or would we just be funding someone else to do that direct role?
Ramona?
Hi, my question would be, do you know, Caroline, if there's anyone else or any other entity that is interested in managing this or bringing things together?
As the shared infrastructure steward?
Yep.
I think potentially Action Health Partners has expressed some interest and could play this role. I don't know if others would, but I think that's part of the conversation we would want to have with all the partners is like, who's out there that could do this and that is interested? And then from there, we would just kind of weigh the pros and cons together so that it's kind of like a shared decision that people buy into. So if anyone else has thoughts about who could do that, please send them along.
So this is Nancy. And I'm going to say this is the reason why I think it's a good project for the ACH. And that is, I'm from the social service side. I'm not from the medical side at all. And I've never worked in the medical field and or been involved in the medical field, although I have worked with families through Head Start, getting them connected to all those medical services. And I sit on different kinds of organizations and boards in town. And what I do appreciate and like about the ACH is that you have connections going both ways. You have strong connections with the healthcare community, as well as you have begun to connect stronger and stronger with the social services community through the CHIs and through your own work. And I don't know of any organization in all of our regions that have that understanding and capacity in both of those areas. That would be my input.
I would agree with Nancy, this is Ramona again. I think that being a part of this or taking that role would help us to meet our goals. It would, you know, the goals are for the community. They're not for our organization. They're for our greater community. And I think it would position us as an ability to help navigate and direct some of the work, or at least be good stewards of it. That would be mine.
And we don't need an answer today. So for those of you who are still digesting, please just think about that question and reach out if you feel strongly either way. And Molly will look to see if there is time we could fold into the retreat. But I hope that was a helpful kind of overview of what we're thinking, and it's still evolving and it's really dialogue based with a lot of our partners. So we'll continue to update you as things morph. And in the meantime, send us your thoughts. Thank
you. Yes, because there are quite a few who are absent who really should be a part of this as well, this discussion. So I agree. This is part one. Okay. Next, we have the 2022 work plan status updates from staff.
Caroline is going to bring up the work plan updates, and really we're going to let staff just go from each one of our strategic priorities. So as you all know, we adopted 5 strategic priorities this last year, and really just explain really where we're at and some of the progress, work we're looking at moving forward, just so you're updated on work progress that we've made this year. So Caroline, if you want to...
Yeah, real quick, John, I just wanted to point out that we created these slides as a handout. So we know it's a ton of text when we're going to share them on the screen, but like we intended for you to be able to digest them in the packet, and we'll just be really high level and brief. Am I sharing the correct screen, John?
You are.
Perfect.
So, Mariah, I believe you're an extrovert. So go ahead.
Yes, thanks, Caroline. So I will be brief, as Caroline mentioned, since you have the handout that you can review yourself, but we wanted to highlight that NCACH is working with Karen Francis McWhite, and she has helped us with our commitment to advancing equitable and inclusive community development throughout the region by providing regular check-ins, and she's going to serve as a resource for reviewing our materials, facilitating trainings, and implementing any DEI, that's diversity, equity, and inclusion, and initiatives. So we have diversity, equity, inclusion discussion plan for both the staff and board members. And staff will actually take place this Friday, and that's going to include both a self-assessment that staff members will complete and keep for their self, and then an organizational assessment that we will discuss. And we're also planning to refine our equity statement that we developed previously, and we kind of shelved it, and we would like to revisit and see if it's something that we want to continue to develop. The board member training is going to take place at the July 15th retreat, and Karen will be there to facilitate that discussion. Additionally, we recently signed up with an online learning platform that has workplace trainings, and they have a wonderful module on diversity, equity, and inclusion that we're going to also have staff complete to coincide with our retreat this Friday. Finally, there's a funding opportunity that we're planning on opening in July, and we are having staff review that. And Karen, that's something Karen is helping us with. So any materials, Caroline had previously worked on a cross collaboration funding that is still open, and that was something that we had Karen review as well. So she's really serving in that kind of allowing us to make sure that what we are putting out there is framed in an equitable lens, both in the application itself and then the application process. So I don't know if I touched on everything. Did I miss anything, John?
Yeah, I think the only thing I would call is, in some of our initial discussions with Karen, what we really realize is through a lot of our education and training, we've all learned a lot of different components of equity and health equity. But we want to really kind of start centering on what that means and where our organization's involvement is in that work, because it's such a broad range and it can mean a variety of things. So some of the focus at the board meeting or board retreat in July is really, what does that mean for NCACH, and what is really our involvement in equity and health equity in the work that we do, so that we kind of have an understanding of what direction we're going, and that we don't surprise you all if we go one direction and you expect it to be the other. I also want to call out, I know we've been a little more sporadic with some of our learning to people together better trainings, but Deb's been joining those, and it's been nice to just have her insight and her feedback, and the one-off conversations we've had about how this all fits in into our organization, or what it means to do health equity in our work. So I really appreciate that from Deb. Caroline, I believe you're up.
Trying to find my unmute button with my screen share. On the cross-sector collaborations updates, the main things we wanted to call out was that we have all 3 memorandums of understanding finalized with the 3 coalitions for health improvement. And the biggest difference this year is what I highlighted in green there in that little box, which is that the allocated funds from the board for the CHIs, we are giving the CHIs full discretion over how to invest those funds. So this is kind of practicing distributed leadership and distributed action. And that's a pretty big change compared to how their contracts were structured in the past. The other big update is, as you all know, we had launched the network analysis in April. Thank you to all of you who worked on those responses. Laurel, thank you to Melina for spending so much time on the responses. The great thing is that 60% of the 178 partners in our network responded to some or all of the questions. Not everybody got through because it was a pretty intensive survey, but we actually have some information about our network characteristics that are going to be really helpful going forward. The survey is closed now. The data scientists are analyzing things. They're going to bring things back to the strategy work group, and then we'll also probably have a report out to the board and our partners in July or August. So look out for that. Joey, I'm passing the baton.
Caroline. So I get the joy of this strategic goal, and I would just want to highlight where we're at with each one of these strategies. And the first one is implementing a recovery coach network for the emergency department, and Samaritan Healthcare in Grant County has decided to champion this bullet. And we're waiting on our community-based agency to sign their portion of the MOU so we can start this work. The expand the recovery coach jail pilot is really awesome. The picture on the top is the Chelan County jail team. We have Catholic Charities and some recovery coaches and some of the folks from the center and some jail staff there. We have seen a lot of success. The quote that Caroline had highlighted here is from a direct quote from one of the recoveries who transitioned from jail to treatment to Oxford, and now is going to become a recovery coach himself, which is pretty awesome. I always tell them that they're the future of this program, and it gives them a lot of hope and keeps them pushing towards the right things. The next bullet is increasing harm reduction in our region. I'm really excited to announce that Grand Coulee is going to have their own vending machine. It's going to be located at Rural Resources. I've already ordered it and just waiting for them to ship it to us. And we did a Narcan training for NCACH school district. They had an overdose there during the pandemic, and they wanted more education on how to use Narcan so they could be proactive in that moment. And they're going to have Narcan in every classroom for that school. And the key partners that we have listed here is growing pretty quick. This is just some of them. And that's it. Thank you. Anything else you think, John, that I missed?
Nope, you got it. You're perfect.
Correct.
So I guess I'm up next, and the final part of the behavioral health was creating a work group to look at the behavioral health system and what we can do as stakeholders to evolve it to meet the needs of those in our region. And you can see there, I'm not going to read all the partners, but those are all the different agencies that have been at the table. Most of those have been consistently at the table. I would say we've had 30 to 40 people at each of the meetings. Tomorrow is our last in-person, and it will be the 9th of the 10th meeting. It's been very well attended. There's been a lot of momentum and a lot of excitement about what we can do. And tomorrow we'll be discussing action plan and budgets and how we'll be moving forward after the consultants, which is in 2 weeks is the last meeting the consultants will be facilitated, but we'll continue it after that. And these participants are shaping and guiding the investments to improve our overall behavioral health system. So they'll be deciding in that distributive action component, creating the budgets together and discussing and deciding how we'll actually distribute that funding amongst each other. So versus the ACH planning that out, we're putting that onto the stakeholders and those who are wanting the money so that they can prioritize what is the most important and how they're actually going to accomplish this within our region. So we're really excited on this new design and how we're working together differently in the region. And that's all I have.
Okay, so for the capacity building, I know we've mentioned the others previously, so I'm going to focus primarily on the quality improvement sprint that I have been assisting our consultant team with. So that is set to wrap up on this Thursday, June 9th. It has been a 9-week collaborative learning series that's designed for organizations that are addressing community health and well-being. So participants have received support to identify and define a local improvement project, which then has been the basis for applying QI concepts and tools, including the model for improvement, improvement charters, measurement for improvement, developing change plans, and then working on sustaining those changes and spreading them. The participating organizations include Action Health Partners, Lake Chelan EMS, which is AKA our board member, Ray Eichmeyer, Grant County Health District, and then, so I have rural resources, sorry. There have been great discussions and collaboration amongst the participating organizations. We're actually working on our final evaluation to be sent out after our session on Thursday, which will provide us with some direction for any future similar capacity building. And there has actually been a lot of interest in additional sessions. So we are considering restarting our QI Affinity monthly meeting so that the Sprint participants can continue to receive support with their improvement projects. And previously this meeting was primarily for clinical partners, but we're actually going to open that up for all that would like to attend. So I'll be reaching out to our previous participants to see if it's something they would like to continue. Yeah, and then we've mentioned the other previously, so I won't go into detail on those.
And then really on the policy side, I would say most of the first part of the year has been Medicaid waiver renewal discussions, Medicaid waiver renewal discussions. And I can repeat that about a dozen times and Laura will probably shake her head yes, as well, as that's been a large amount of the discussions. But we also, we're trying to reach out and connect more with the counties and the county commissioners to learn more and how we can collaborate better. Just an example is discussion we have with Commissioner Overby and Commissioner Straub about the regional diversion center work that's been going on and how we can align some of the behavioral health stuff we're doing, and what that's really led to is additional staff members joining the regional diversion center work group. Wendy has really been working with managed care organizations, and Kat, I really would call out, and I see Kat called in, I think, to really define and develop some quarterly meetings so that we can really start working on some things together more so than just updates. And Wendy, I don't know if there's anything specific you want to share on that.
No, just Kat and I, we're just being very intentional about how we will be meeting with MCOs. And we're co-designing it together, MCOs and NCACH. So Kat is the liaison for the MCOs and I'm the liaison for the ACHs.
And I had shared earlier, the ACHs are working to come together on more of a statewide legislative policy agenda. And then the last thing I'm going to mention, it kind of crosses a few things. I think I forgot to bring this up. And Joey, I should have had you mention it. So we've actually been working with the Alano Club on a recovery, what's the RCO stand for again, Joey?
Recovery Community Organization.
Recovery Community Organization. And we've also partnered with Brooklyn Houghton as an independent consultant, and some of you may have remembered Brooklyn on our board in the past, are really to help them, get set up and structured in the way that they need to be an RCO and partner with the healthcare authority on some funding that they've received. And that kind of aligns with some conversations we've also had with the Community Foundation in North Central Washington on this, really this idea of like civic engagement, building leadership, building capacity in some of these smaller organizations and some of these grassroots partners. So that, when we look at advocacy and policy, it's not just, how do we advocate up to the state, but how do we build that structure in some of the partners across the region so that they are able to have a voice and that the work that they are doing are able to get more recognized. So the RCO really probably covers capacity building, behavioral health work, and a level of how we are helping smaller organizations build up into advocating for themselves in a greater level. And I think that covered it. We went really fast, partially to make up time, so I apologize for that, but any questions? And if you do, always please reach out to staff if there's anything you saw where you said, I don't really have any questions, but I would love to know more about that bullet. Feel free to connect with me or connect with staff directly and say, hey, can we spend 30 minutes? Can we spend an hour talking about the work that you're doing so I can learn more and I can be a better advocate in that work? We are always happy to inform board members in what's going on.
All right, thank you, John. At this time, we were going to have a break built in, and I'm not sure if everyone is willing to take a quick 2-3 minute break. It'll have to be a pretty quick one, but we can get then one back. So now we're on to the strategy work group updates with Chris Kelleher and Dr. Tuggy. So Chris, go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's Squee. Yeah. So let's, could you actually, what I'm going to do is we're tag teaming this, as Molly just said. I'm going to go over the work plan that we have for the strategy work group, and then Dr. Tuggy is going to talk about some of the recent progress we've made. Could you go all the way to the end? I want to show the detailed work plan. So we have this is the last page in your packet. We have a detailed work plan for the strategy work group that covers, well, it started in May and it goes all the way through December. I will not spend a lot of time on this right now. The details are there if you want to go look at them. Needless to say, the farther out you go, the more tentative some things are. There might be some shifting around toward the end of the year, but this would give you an idea of the overall plan that we have. What I will do though, in lieu of going into looking at all these cells, is I'm going to focus on a few key things. And so John, could you scroll up to that table? Yeah, thanks. Yeah, make it so we can see the whole thing. Okay, so what I'm going to do is talk about 4 sort of tracks. There are other things that we're doing, but I want to just to make it a little bit easier to absorb, we want to focus on just 4 things here. So I'm going to move from left to right, starting off, and I'm going to go each one row at a time. So in the first row, one of the things that we're doing right now, and we'll be doing in July as well, is choosing scenarios for what we're calling the regional compact. We'll talk more about that. If time permits, we'll talk more about it today. We will definitely talk about it at the July retreat. So you'll know more about that, but the basic idea is that a compact / partner agreement that enables everybody we're working with to get on the same page, literally on the same page, because everybody literally signs a document saying this is our understanding about what we're doing. So we need to develop that and say, okay, well, what is our own internal understanding of what we're doing before we ask other people to sign on? So we'll be going through that process through the summer and fall, getting input from people to make sure that we craft something that everybody feels good about. Like basically laying out the mission, laying out what our objectives are, and laying out what it means to be a part of this network that we're trying to build. And then so by the end of the year, we would look for board approval of the compact, and we would have a plan for disseminating it and getting people to consider it and sign on. Next row, we want to. We're in the middle of doing this. We've been doing this, really, discussing the values and the priorities that are related to distributed leadership. We've come, that's been a subject ever since last year when the board approved our 3 pillars, one of which really emphasizes distributed leadership. Well, we need to, as we knew at the time, figure out exactly what that means. We want to, moving on to that in the summer and fall column, identify the sectors and the groups and the constituencies who are not engaged right now. This is related to also to the row above too. Who's not at the table, who's not involved right now, who should be involved. We want to not just leave that to chance. We want to be very purposeful about making sure that we bring on people and we approach people who might normally not participate. And then by the end of the year, what we're aiming to do is to have what we're calling right now a champion sprint. You all should be in the positions acting as champions. As board members, you should be champions of North Central ACH and particularly what we're doing with this network, and be able to talk about it and to serve as effective advocates. We're not there yet. We need to do a lot of work to get us all sort of really well aligned, understanding what are the key talking points and what are the key things to be hitting on when we talk to others. So that's our aim, to get to the end, by the end of the year, be in a place where everybody feels comfortable doing that. Third row, we're going to launch 2 task forces. First is a learning task force that we're forming right now. As many of you know, we have a series of partner meetings that we've been holding since January. Up until now, we've been sort of planning those internally. John and Caroline and me and a few other people have been getting together to decide what the agenda should be, figure out who the speakers should be. That's been fine. It's been good. It's gotten us going. But long term, it shouldn't be some small group deciding what this should be. These convenings are for the entire region. And so we want to bring on more people to help us understand how to create a learning agenda that's exciting and that's really stimulating. So we'll have a task force, limited duration, that's going to focus on that, figuring out what our convening should be like for the rest of the year. In the middle column, a measurement task force to help Sarah understand exactly what our focus should be for measurement for the remainder of this year and going into 2023. By the end of the year, we'll see how those two task forces have gone. We'll decide whether they should continue or we should just sunset them. We don't want to just carry these on into perpetuity. The idea is have them do their work and then wrap, close up shop when the time is right. Final row. We want to develop a good understanding of what our objectives are for the rest of the year. And so there's a lot of sort of discussion about, okay, exactly, we've got our overall work plan that I showed you, but really what should our focus be? And what should our objectives be? We want then in the summer and fall to develop our 2023 strategies and work plan. Okay, so we know what we're aiming to do for the rest of this year. What is happening in 2023? Like, how do we build strong momentum and maintain that momentum with the idea that there would be board approval of the strategies and the work plan by the end of this year. Because we're running a little bit behind, I ran through that pretty fast. But I want to pause now and ask whether there are comments, questions about any of the things that I discussed. Okay, well, there'll be many more opportunities to weigh in on this. This is a living process, and it will sort of ebb and flow and change. And as I mentioned, this is going to be the strategy generally will be a big focus of the July retreat. So we'll have many more opportunities to talk about this and sort of understand exactly where we're heading and have you all weigh in on where we're heading. Okay, so I'm going to hand off now to Dr. Tuggy, who's going to talk about our 3 pillars and some work that the strategy work group has done to define better what it is we want to achieve with the 3 pillars. What do they really mean? Dr. Tuggy?
Great. I think my microphone's on, so hopefully you can hear me. So we went through and kind of looked at what are the 3 pillars and how do we look at what is success or what is not success look like. And what you can see on this first slide, the pillar 1 being the inclusive distributed leadership process, and that is that is something that we've talked quite a bit about in our previous meetings as a board, but also just looking at examples of how this could be done well or could be done poorly, and really trying to take the power away from just a few partners and really bringing in the broad spectrum of stakeholders out there who do need to be part of our leadership structure, and also developing the strategies themselves as we look at how to distribute that work. We want, obviously the key thing here is making sure that all the stakeholders feel like they have a deep involvement and are connected both in the regional level and locally in order to actually achieve the services that we want to deliver to our communities. And so that ownership is really a key aspect of this distributed leadership model. The other thing is looking at, this will tie into the measures component too, is like after we do this work and get the leadership structures developed and connected, then what are the measures we're going to actually look at? And that leads right into pillar 2. We want to first, this is going to be part of the work of that measurement task force, is defining what are the metrics we should be looking at. What are the health outcomes? What are the social determinant outcomes we want to be measuring? And not limited to just health, but actual social determinants as well. And figure out what are the real metrics that matter. I mean, we've done this somewhat in primary care. We have metrics that matter that we've been defining in that. And it's a bit of work to look at the research and look at the outcomes that you really want to target and that are measurable. And then and if we're successful in the second pillar, we'll have a shared data set that are meaningful to everybody, that we can go in and look at maybe our particular area of work that we're responsible for the community and see the metrics and how we're performing, and then also be able to look across the network and see how others are performing on those metrics as well. And that can certainly inform decisions about what strategies we want to employ as we try to target future strategies looking in the years ahead. And then the third thing is having this advanced transformation through a regional portfolio. And this is that network building. I mean, building out the whole strategic initiatives that we want to work on as a network, and then creating that portfolio that everyone believes in. And this is, again, tied to the compact that we will be able to identify and identify with and agree with the key initiatives that are being promoted by the ACH. And then if we're successful in doing that, we'll have this shared agenda and really be able to impact the most significant weaknesses within our community structure and health needs, and also community needs, social needs that need to be addressed. So if we go to the next slide, the three pillar themes really is really centering on people and partners, their experiences, voices, and assets. What are the things that we can bring together in this partnership and reduce those barriers by being inclusive and accessible and welcoming to all the stakeholders in our communities. And then facilitating this co-ownership and co-creation through the learning collaborative, the connections that are made through the compact, and then moving those strategies forward together in a unified front. In our last meeting, we also spent some time looking at what does this compact look like, and part of it is really kind of thinking through what are the primary levers that actually are going to have the biggest impact. And I think these are the things that we discussed at our last meeting. Like, what are the things that people feel are most important? And this will be, I think, something that we'll be working on together over the summer. And I suspect this will be part of our retreat too, is looking at what are the primary levers we want to focus our attention on, because there's a lot of work that could be done in advocacy, policy work, looking across how do we convene across boundaries between different parts of our support systems that we have within our communities, and then how important are the innovations and advancing new models. Again, I think about the healthcare sector where we're looking at new models of care delivery, and you have to prioritize that. How much resource you can put into developing those new models and actually implementing them, as opposed to continue doing the same things the old way. And the other thing about levers too is building capacity for change, and also capacity for leadership. I think that's another key thing we talked about recently, is just how leadership development is such a key aspect. It can take just a small number of really effective leaders to make significant change within a community. So how do we build that capacity through leadership development? And then I already mentioned measuring what matters, and that's going to be a really important discussion too, is to figure out which metrics do we really want to be following and targeting for improvement over the next year or two as we implement our strategies. And then building these narratives and case studies to be able to help inspire action with our political leaders and within our leadership within our organizations as well. So the next thing again on the compact too is looking at how we want, what are the reasons why an organization may want to join this distributed leadership network that we're trying to create, and basically selling the case to all the different constituent organizations as to why they want to sign on to the compact. And I think that'll be a big piece of work as we decide what's going to be in it. How do we share the values and the vision? And I think that's going to make it make the compact much more powerful if we can articulate that really well. Go back to you, John, or to Chris.
Yeah, well, thank you, Dr. Huggie. I guess we should ask if we have a poll that we've developed. I think we're prepared to get your input on the levers question, certainly. And but before we do that though, we should ask, are there any questions or comments on what Dr. Huggie just talked about?
I think it's pretty spot on.
I agree. I think it's excellent. Great, a wonderful course of action.
And Chris, I just made a comment, the whole concept of going down a route of a compact and doing this as a region is really, NCACH as an organization is really supporting, helping develop this in the region, but it's really the regional partners that need to own this work and understand how they work together. So really a lot of these concepts is really buy-in from across the partners and how they can work and how they can coordinate together to make change. And that's a key component of it.
Do we want to do the poll? It's up to you. It's your agenda and you know how much time you want to allot to things.
We still have time, Chris.
Okay. All right. So I think Wendy, you're in charge of the poll. Okay.
Can you give a little context?
Yeah. So this is well, we have two. So hopefully, if time permitting, we have two polls. So we just looked at these slides. So this is a complete. What you see here is the same as what Dr. Tuggy just talked about. So one of the questions is, what are our primary levers for creating change in the region? So you see the list of the list there. If you had to pick one, I mean, we don't have to pick only one. This is an artificial exercise. But if you had to pick only one, we're curious which one you would pick. So with that in mind, knowing that this is, Joey asked this for everyone. Yeah, I think everyone here should weigh in on this. This is non-binding. This is just sort of to get a sense of the group. Again, hypothetically, if you had to pick only one lever, which one would you pick? Once you enter in your choices, it'll all tally up and we can look at the results. So go.
John, I saw that Mr. Hunter asked if he can do the poll too.
Yep. Yeah, Chris responded.
Oh, sorry, I missed it. Sorry, Chris.
No problem. Yeah, I think everybody should respond. Yes, it's yeah.
Probably I was reading too much.
I'm going to share the results. 22 of 24 have.
I think there's a way to show the results whenever you're.
Can you see the results?
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah, that's interesting. Just on a very rough glance, it's fairly similar to the percentages that when the strategy work group talked about this. The number one among the strategy work group was the narratives one. That definitely came in first. So we're all in pretty good alignment, it would seem.
Can I ask, was there, for those who had taken the poll, who's willing to share, was there a reason why you felt one was strong? The one you chose was strong? Or your top choice?
This is Ray. I picked advocacy and driving policy change because as one small critical access hospital or EMS has very little power to drive policy change versus us together can really do that. And there's just no way I could achieve those things by myself. For like piloting innovations, I could probably do that by myself. But that one I couldn't do.
This is Dell. I think I did also advocacy and policy change because I feel like, especially in behavioral health anyways, that I love care coordination and I love being able to help individuals connect with all the services they need to help them have a better whole life perspective. But a lot of times our challenges are that the policies haven't changed. And so no matter how many times we try to change the way we do business, there's always barriers in being able to actually truly connect with other providers.
This is Kathy, and it looks like, I think I'm the only one who picked this based on the score, but I chose measuring matters. I don't necessarily think that North Central ACH has to be the measure of everything, but I do think that it should be helping to drive measurements in terms of shared mission, shared vision, shared goals and objectives, so that once we get people in alignment, that we're actually looking at some quality measures so we can see what programs are effective and what programs are not, and then have a better idea of where to support programs.
This is Carlene. Yeah, it was difficult to pick and choose on this. And I went back and forth finally between the advocacy and the developing the narratives. And I think to do that advocacy, we have to create those narratives. So that's why I went with developing narratives.
Yeah, I'll just tag on to Carlene. I did it in order of precedence, like what do you have to begin with? And none of these things stand alone. It's just, where you start. And I agreed with that and did narratives. Yeah.
One of the things that we'll want to do in practice, obviously, as I mentioned, we're not choosing only one for the reasons everybody just said, is to develop a plan where the levers sort of help to move each other. I mean, that's ultimately what you want to do, and you want to be, really think about how they all fit. And there may be others too. We're not saying these are the only levers that might ever matter, but this is just a starting point.
Yeah, my answer I think changed from the first time I took this poll because I was thinking about the whole idea about innovations and or creating or changing the model. But the thing about capacity building, I think to me it strikes me the capacity for leadership and the capacity to execute are two things that we definitely have to have as part of our plan. I think because we don't. We can have great ideas and great stories, but if we don't have a way to actually execute on the ground, the changes that we see that need to happen, that really makes it a challenge. So like Peter said, these are all really deeply interconnected. And I like the idea of having levers that flip other levers. But developing the leadership across organizations that are focused on targeted efforts and also how to deliver on them, how to execute on them is really going to be key.
All right, do you want to do this? John, do you want to do the second poll?
I know we were going to ask a question breakouts. We're running a little short on time. I wanted to get a sense. Do we want to do the second poll or just do the breakouts? I'm chatting with the team, so it sounds like we're doing second poll. So let's move to the second poll, and we may just have a question to ask to contemplate for the retreat.
So this one, again, same thing. We looked at this in one of the slides. So this is coming at this from a different perspective, but imagine that we have a compact. There are lots of, you're not going to say everything in the world. You have to choose what you want to emphasize and what you want to encourage, what you want to discourage. So thinking about thinking about people who we might go to, an organization with a compact, saying, would you like to join this network? What are your thoughts about which of these do we want to encourage or potentially strongly encourage, or maybe even discourage as a motivation for joining into this network? So is there anything here you're like, you know what, if that's your reason for joining the network, you shouldn't do it, right? Then that's something we should discourage. On the other side, if there's something like, yeah, if that's your motivation for joining the network, we really, really want you. And so we would try to emphasize that dimension in how we write the compact. That make sense? All right, so. How are we on responses, Wendy?
15 of 24 have responded.
As I'll say, this also is another non-binding one. We'll talk more about this at the retreat, and that's really the retreat discussion will do a lot to guide this. This is just sort of getting an initial sense of the group.
And I like the fact that everyone will have a say before the retreat, you know,
Yeah,
that sounds good.
Nancy, is it behind your screen by chance? Sometimes it'll show up behind your, if you see the faces, it'll show up in the background or in a pop-up behind it. You have 17 have.
well, I know you have another item to move on to at 3, so we could look at the results now. Again,
Okay.
we'll revisit all this many times.
Can you see the results?
Yes. So as I see it, the ones that had votes for discourage, the most votes for discourage were on to gain or maintain high esteem in the community and to get money or other resources. So at least some people thought we should discourage those, as well as a few votes also for some of the others too, for things we should discourage. That's an important thing to talk about. The discouraging thing is actually the trickier part of this, and the part we have to be really clear on, because you really don't want people joining your network for the wrong reasons. It just creates all kinds of problems. So we want to be very clear on that before we really solidify this down the road. Okay, any questions or comments about this? All right, well, and I guess any closing comments about any of the discussion that we've had about strategy or the strategy work group, any particular thoughts about what you want to hear more about, what you don't want to hear more about, anything?
Chris, this is John. Just kind of a quick comment on the motivation, since it's still up, because I know I commented about this in the strategy work group. I think what Chris said is important around that like what's to encourage and discourage, because ultimately we're trying to move this as a region. We also want people looking out for the regional partners and not just for themselves. So I had originally said I struggle asking for motivations for people to join, but I have to recognize that people should have a motivation to join. And honestly, we as a region should be looking at the benefit of every one of the partners so that we can make sure that they are getting the quality they need out of a collaborative effort. But you also want them to be very altruistic in some ways too, that they're looking out for each other and not just for themselves.
Yeah, I'll just follow up on that. Oh, does anybody else have a comment? I have a quick follow up if no one does. Yeah, I think it's this blend. You want people to be doing things for the benefit of the region, not just to be able to extract some value for themselves, and that's all they care about. Like if it's that, then we're going to be in big trouble. So you want people to really care about the region. But at the same time, if you don't have, if you don't feel that participating is advancing your interest, meaning even your interest broadly, like the things that you care about, not just your sort of selfish interest, but just generally the things that are important to you, you might join initially, but you'll eventually drop off. So we want to really make sure that people are feeling properly invested. And that begins right at the start with how we word the compact.
All right. Thank you, Chris. We'll get into this more than at the retreat.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Pat.
Yep. Now up next, we have the Hope Squad update with invite back Alyssa Polson and Dr. Julie Rickards. So welcome.
Thank you, Molly. We're going to turn it over to Alyssa and Dr. Rickard, but first, Caroline is going to show a video that Digital Media Northwest created for us to promote the Hope Squad. So she's going to get that up, and then we will have Alyssa and Dr. Rickard do their presentation.
Okay, and I gotta make sure I select the right audio thing. So give me a second. Share sound. I think I got it. And if you don't hear sound, please somebody say something. Otherwise, I'm just gonna press play and hopefully it works fine. Apparently it's taking a while to load. Give me a second.
Hi, I'm Holly Weston. I'm a school psychologist and one of the leaders of the Hope Squad at Pateris. This program is new to us. We started it this year after the suicide of one of our students. After Nate's suicide, we were told of this program that was actually, it was amazing for us because it gave us something to do with our grief. It brought a lot of the kids together, and it just was amazing for us to have something to do with our grief and to move forward with things to prevent suicide. We had done so many things prior to the pandemic and during the pandemic, and to have one of our students one year, we have the whole school out, you know, K through 12 cheering him on to state for wrestling, and then a year later, he's gone.
My name is Sage Scott, and I'm actually co-president of the Hope Squad. This program can make such a difference in schools and within our community, and the message that's driving it is just such a positive and hopeful message that I just knew I just really wanted to get involved.
Hi, my name is Harveen Gill, and I am a senior at Pateris High School, and I am a representative of my class for Hope Squad. Hope gives me a chance to live on my life. Hope is something, just the word itself gives so much meaning to my life. Like me personally, I've had a lot of situations in life regarding not just suicide, but like loneliness, sadness, stress, and all of that stuff from school, from life, from like family, everything. And like hope is something that gave me a chance to pursue on and like live my life on. And with the kids that are in the Hope Squad program, they give me a chance to smile. Like I go in every day and I'm like, yeah, this is what I live for. Like I have my family, I have my friends, everything. And so it made a really big, huge impact on me after this program started.
I'm Kendon Hook. I'm a 9th grader in Pateris High School. When I was 3, my brother committed suicide. And then 8 years later, I was 11 and my sister committed suicide. And so I really had to live with the stigma of being like that family, you know, it's just like, and so I just really felt like there shouldn't be that stigma. And I've always wanted to do something about that, but I never really known how. And so I really thought the Hope Squad was going to be that perfect opportunity. No one really knows why that person has done what they have, but then Hope Squad brings this light to it. It's like they were obviously in just a bad mental state and they didn't see any other way out. And it was just, they just weren't thinking. And so it's given closure amongst trust in other people and tools to use to see how people behave and what that means for them. Knowing or feeling that there is someone or something out there that is going through the same thing as you, but has made it through. You know, there's someone or something that has lived through that, just seeing how they've lived through it and knowing that you can do that yourself.
We had to talk about some hard things. You know, when we talked about when things to look for in peers, and some kids maybe felt like maybe they had missed things with their friend Nate. And so we really have to be careful and think, this is not about, you did wrong. This is about, we didn't know and now we do better. The kids their own came up with this idea, the kids from his class, and they had brought balloons in and had written on it, and they wanted to let those go for him out there. That's what that was. And a lot of the Hope Squad members were out there too, and they watch and help kids that are having a difficult time. It takes a community to raise a child, but it takes a community to save one.
I told Mariah that there wasn't going to be a dry eye after that video because it is just so powerful and emotional. Thank you all for having me today. I don't know if we can get the presentation up, Mariah, or should I share my screen? Perfect. So my name is Alyssa Polson, and I am the North Central Washington Regional Hope Squad Coordinator. And I'm actually with Together for Youth representing Hope Squad in the Ford County region. So I just wanted to, I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with Hope Squad, so just a brief overview of what Hope Squad is. So Hope Squad is a peer-to-peer school-based suicide prevention program. And so Hope Squad members are actually nominated in the Hope Squad by their peers and their classmates. Somebody who would be in the program would be trustworthy, somebody who wouldn't be bullying, and somebody who would be able to, or that their friend would want to go to when they were in a mental crisis. So after they're nominated and they're in the Hope Squad, through the year, they are trained by an advisor. So either a teacher, a counselor, a staff member there at the school, and they have different topics that they go through the year on mental health, self-care, and suicide prevention. So Hope Squad as a whole, it was founded in Provo, Utah in the early 2000s. And they currently today have 1,300 squads in 35 different states, including Canada. And so the idea with Hope Squad is to reduce the youth suicides through education, training, and peer intervention. And their mission is, while it takes a village to raise a child, we believe it takes an entire community to save one. So here in the North Central Washington region, this is the map. So if you go to hopesquad.com, you can actually see all of the locations where Hope Squad is represented. And so I just took a brief screenshot of our area, so our Ford County region. So I was hired in May of 2021. And when I started, Julie Rickard and Mondo had worked together and contacted all the schools, junior high and high schools in North Central Washington to implement Hope Squad. And so when I started, we had about 15 schools signed up to implement Hope Squad that school year, so the 21-22 school year. And so come fall, so through the summer, the advisors did their 6-hour online self-paced training, as well as a QPR training, which is the suicide prevention model that Hope Squad uses. And come that fall, so September of 2021, Pateros and Okanagan were the only 2 schools that were ready to start their Hope Squad program. So as of May 2022, we have 34 schools signed up, and 15 of those schools are actively participating. So what does that mean? Schools that are actively participating have selected their advisors, have done the nomination process, and selected their Hope Squad members, are meeting with their Hope Squads once a month at least, and going through the curriculum, and as well as putting on events and activities to represent hope and suicide prevention. And the advisors are participating in the advisor collaboration meeting once a month that I put on and facilitate. So some of the accomplishments that I have been able to do is just being able to be present. I mean, it has been a very, very difficult year with COVID and schools being shut down or virtual. So being able to attend these Hope Squad events through the schools that they put on, as well as community table events. So I was able to actually partner with the WSU Extension, their 4-H program at Apple Blossom. And so that was in April. And just the amount of people that are talking about Hope Squad, it is so fun to see. Just people come up to me like, oh, I know Hope Squad. And they may not know what exactly it's about, but they at least know the name and they know it's a good thing and that we need this program. So as well as the community tabling events, we have also done some informational nights through the school. So some community nights or resource fairs put on by some of the schools, as well as parent nights. So I was able to go to Chelan High School for their mental health community night and do a presentation on Hope Squad, as well as substance abuse, which Together for Youth represents as well. So obviously being able to sign on 15 schools to implement the Hope Squad is a super accomplishment in a pandemic year, as well as being able to facilitate monthly advisor collaboration meetings. So what that means is once a month, I put on a Zoom meeting for all the advisors in our region to be able to come together, talk about what successes, some challenges that they're having, what kind of activities they're doing, as well as just anything that they have questions about. I may be able to do a training, whether that's bringing in guest speakers or even doing just like an overview of the Hope Squad website and the advisor portal. There is a lot of information in that little portal that the advisors have access to. So just being able to break it down for them a little bit, I think has made it easier. And I'm actually able to attend quarterly meetings with the founder of Hope Squad, Dr. Greg Hudnall, and his team, just being able to talk about what we're doing on a regional level, and then having them support us is a super neat thing to do. They also put on some advisor meetings. So I try and attend those when I can, just to relay that information back to the advisors that aren't able to attend those meetings as well. And then just some other things is making connections and partnerships with our local organizations, such as Community in Schools, the WSU Extension 4-H groups, and Only 7 Seconds, as well as the ESD. Shelly Sessler and her team are awesome and great to give me connections when I need them. So, and then the big accomplishment I would say is this Hope Squad video. You just saw part 1, and that was representing Pateras and their Hope Squad. We have a few others that have done interviews, and so I'm really excited to see the whole video come together. So some of the reports that Hope Squad does is, so they're actually partnered with BYU to conduct studies and compare the data that is done, and that's where the evidence-based data comes from. So every year they do a pre and post survey done by the students. So at the start of the year or whenever their squad starts and meets that first meeting, they do a pre-survey, and then at the end of the year, they'll do a post-survey. And they make it super simple. It's done by a QR code or a link, depending on the access that the kids have. A lot of them do have phones now, so it's super simple to be able to do that. And the questions are the same. So it just measures their knowledge of suicide prevention and just their mental health state, where they're at, how many kids they are talking to, how many students they've referred, and that kind of information. And as well as those 2 surveys, they also have a data collection form or a referral form. So this report is actually done by the advisors, because they're the ones that are getting the referrals and being able to send them to the proper forms. So, so not to say that there hasn't been referrals this year, but the data that has been collected as of June 1st, we have data from Okanagan, Arundel, and Pateras. So 3 schools out of our 15 that are actively participating have had referrals this school year. So 14 referrals from Okanagan, 2 from Pateras, and 1 from Arundel. And so some of the data that has been collected, I was able to contact Hope Squad to get this data. And so I just thought it was super interesting that so 71% of the referrals have been female. So 12 of those were female and 5 were male. And then they were also able to tell how the student was referred. So just looking at it, one was from a Hope Squad advisor or their counselor. We do have a lot of the advisors are already counselors. 5 of those referrals were done by a Hope Squad member. So the Hope Squad member would go to the student with and go to the advisor to do the referral. And then they would have a conversation and help out as best they could and support. 1 referral was done by a parent. 8 of those referrals were self-reported and 2 were from a teacher. And so the nature of the suicide, 2 had reported a suicide attempt. 1 was a self-harm with suicidal thoughts. 3 were suicidal thoughts with an intent or plan. And 11 of those were had suicidal thoughts without an intent or plan to harm. So some of the Hope Squad events and activities we've done is the International Day of Hope. I was able to participate in both Pateras and Waterville's Day of Hope, and that was back in February. This is done by Hope Squad. It's not the one in April. So Pateras actually did a great job with their International Day of Hope. They put on a huge assembly that was 7 through 12. And this picture right here is the mayor of Pateras, Kelly Hook. And he actually, their Pateras Hope Squad did a Day of Hope proclamation. So every February 17th, they're able to celebrate that Day of Hope. And as well as the International Day of Hope, every squad also does a Hope Week, which is a whole week designated to spread awareness on suicide prevention and awareness of hope. So I was able to participate in Waterville Pioneer Middle School and Sterling Junior High. And it is so cool to see these kids in action, just taking leadership, taking charge of these activities and these events. I was just at Sterling this last week, and they had a table for their Hope Squad. They were in, these junior high kids were in charge of the whole event. Kids were asking them questions and they were answering them. They also had a whole poster about QPR, what it is, and what you can do to help other students. So this is also Pateras, and I just wanted to recognize them because they did do their proclamation, and then this was their squad. I believe they have 26 kids in their squad, 7th grade through 12th grade. And so if you're not familiar, the color yellow actually resembles suicide prevention. So. And then these are some of our other squads. So we have Okanagan Middle School, as well as Waterville High School. And this is during their Hope Weeks as well. Waterville High School did an event through the week. And then on that Thursday, because they don't have school on Fridays, they did an assembly and kids were pieing teachers in the face based on a point system. So some success stories. I have been talking to the advisors for months now, and I could go on and on about it. But some of the really cool things that some of the schools have done is they have provided QPR nights for parents and community members, and that was at Walook. They were able to collaborate with the ESD. And they were able to do a Spanish and English QPR night for parents so that parents are aware and know what to look for as well. And then some of our squads were able to do a retreat for their Hope Squad members. So they go off-site, off school property, and do a big day or weekend, whatever they have time for. And they may do like a little mini lesson with the curriculum. The way the curriculum is designed is it has a lesson portion, an activity portion. And so a lot of our squads have decided to do meet at least twice a month. So they'll do the lesson portion one of the meetings and then the activity portion the next meeting. And then with the retreat, they're able to do a couple of those lessons and activities, as well as doing big group activities and team building events. And I've talked about some Hope Weeks, as well as leadership opportunities. This is a great way for kids to really take charge and be a leader in their schools. So whether that's in Hope Squad or running for ASB, as well as the National Hope Squad Council. You can go to the next slide there. And so this is a huge opportunity. We actually have one of our students from Waterville representing for the 2022-2023 school year. And she is actually the only representative in Washington State. So the Hope Squad National Council is made up of students from all around the country. It is put on by the team in Utah. And so this year, I believe they had 150 applicants and only 35 students were selected. And Julia was one of those students that was selected for that council. And so they do a lot of amazing things. They're able to go to different Hope Squads to do a presentation, as well as going to their government officials, their state officials to do presentations and participate in conferences around the country, all sorts of things. So it's a great opportunity and I'm super excited for her. All right, so next steps. So this is kind of what we've done this year. This is year one. And so I just think we've done some great things. Being in a pandemic, it has been difficult, but the ultimate goal within the 4 years is to get the 48 schools and 90 advisors for Hope Squad. So what I'm going to do next is review the schools from the original list that I have that may have signed up but not really implementing, and then going back to those schools that are not signed up. So getting them to apply for Hope Squad through Together for Youth, and then implement. So I'm really going to be focusing on Okanagan and Grant counties. The focus in those counties is based on our numbers. So if you break it down by county, we have 10 schools participating in Chelan, 9 schools participating in Douglas County, 8 schools participating in Grant County, and 7 schools participating in Okanagan County. So Grant and Okanagan County are just a little lower than I'd like. And so I really want to be focusing on these schools in those counties, as well as helping any schools that may need extra support, whether that means they've signed up, aren't implementing. If I need to help with the curriculum, because I am trained to do that, I would love to be able to help those schools in that way, and seeking supplemental supplies and funding. So some of the things that I've been asked is for Hope Squad shirts and different materials, just being able to go through grants and different donations and things like that. And then the last is the Hope Squad retreat. So the goal is to actually bring Dr. Greg Hudnall and his team to Washington and put on a conference, maybe do some breakout sessions and things like that. And so I would love to do that spring of 2023. And then every year after that, doing an end of the year celebration with all the advisors in all the schools. That's all I have.
That's great. And then the only thing I would add is that, so one of the things that came out of this year is that we've seen an increase in gang activity throughout our, I don't know about 2 of the counties, but Chelan and Douglas has seen an increase. And so one of the things that we're seeing now that we've kind of gotten together for some community meetings is that the schools that have a Hope Squad already established are in a good position to already have a pathway for identifying and kind of working on some prevention strategies for kids that are gang involved. And so utilizing the same group to be able to learn and recognize the signs, and then also building the pathways to care that we currently have into therapy or other medical interventions, but for gang kids, using the Hope Squad to identify them, get them to advisors. The advisors then go on to refer into the mental health pathway to trained therapists that are able to pull in the family and do other things. We're also building in a pathway to some school resources as well. So I think we're seeing that that's super hopeful. And then the other piece is that I'm working with the Hope Squad, Dr. Hudnall, on creating a Hope Squad for senior facilities, so the long-term care facilities. So actually creating one for long-term care facilities based on our regional work that we've got going. All right, I think that's us for us. Any questions people have? All right, well, thank you.
No
Go ahead.
questions, just a comment of what fantastic work you're doing. And thank you very much for this report. It's heartbreaking to think that we need it, and it's wonderful to know that you are working on it.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is Kat. Apologies, I'm not on Zoom. I'm just on the phone, so I hope I'm not interrupting anybody. But again, just want to echo the amazing work. And something that stood out actually also is I know that we are facing a behavioral health workforce crisis as well at the moment. And so just as we consider thoughts around building the pipeline of youth and folks that might be interested in engaging in this space, just thought that might be an opportunity to think about pipeline growth with the advisors, I think, and the student advisors engaged in this program. So thank you so much again.
Yeah, that's a great comment. And actually, there's been some work with the Hope Squad around this. And what we see is that if we can access the kids early before it becomes a mental health crisis, they actually engage less into the mental health services. And, then you can kind of get the families involved and kind of do some of the back work that otherwise wouldn't get done.
All right, thank you so much. Oh, yes, was there more?
I did have a question too. If you are working with the Lake Roosevelt School District?
They are implementing, and I believe they're just doing it with their high school this year. They're actually on my list to connect to see how they're going to expand, if they're going to go into the junior high as well, because they are a K-12 school. So.
All right.
Did you also reach out to NCACH school district? They told me that they didn't have capacity to do it when you guys asked them the first time due to the pandemic, but they would love to participate now.
Yeah, I will definitely reach back out to their counselor there. I do have connections, so yeah.
If there are no other questions, I just want to remind everyone that there is an open house this Friday for the retirement of Linda. Thank you, Alyssa and Julie. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yes. Also, we have a board retreat July 15th. Doesn't look like we have time for roundtable discussion, but I want to thank you all for staying these extra few minutes because it was such an important topic. So thank you. Reach out to the staff if you want to continue any of these discussions. So I will adjourn the meeting at this time.